Okay, so for part E, we have to multiply. So we are multiplying f of x. This is f of x, and we're going to multiply that by g of x. So notice that f of x is what we call a trinomial because there's 3 terms. You should already have this part copied down because we did part A, B, C, and D yesterday. We're just continuing with what we started yesterday. We did A, B, C, and D yesterday. You should already have this copy down. And now we're just doing E, F, G, and H. So this is multiplication. So let's go ahead and make our box. So take a few minutes and fill in all 6 squares. So you're just making a box. Multiply your numbers, and then you're adding your exponents. All right, so in that first square, we have 4x times x squared, and that would be 4x cubed. And then we have 4x times negative 2x. That's negative 8x squared. 4x times 1 is 4x. Now let's do our bottom row. You're going to take negative 3 times x squared, and that gives you negative 3x squared. What do you get when you take negative 3 times negative 2x? Positive 6x. And then in our last square, we have a positive 1 times a negative 3, which is a negative 3. Our like terms are at a diagonal. So this is a like term, these two, because they're both x squared. And then these two, because they're both x to the first. So my final answer for part E would be 4x cubed. And what do you get when you add these two squares together? Negative 3x squared and negative 8x squared. Minus 11x squared. And then when we add our x's, 6x and 4x, 7x, 10x. And then we have our minus 3. This is our answer to part E. Now you have a skills check this week over 2.1. So I want to talk about, and you have a quiz next week over 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. But I want to talk about different ways to do part F. Okay, there's 2 different ways that we can do part F. All right, one way to do part F would be to use this equation that we came up with and plug in the negative 2. Because what this is telling you to do is to take F times G and then put in a negative 2. So there's 2 different ways we can do it. We already found F times G. So to find F times G of negative 2, we would use that equation, which is 4x cubed. I'm just going to write it out. Hold on, I need some more space to the right. There we go. And then it's minus 11x squared plus 10x minus 3. And we're going to put our negative 2 in right there. So go ahead, use your calculator and type that in and see what you get. Does anybody need a calculator? Okay. Go ahead, type that in just like that. So I think I remember from 5th period. I'm gonna give you all a chance to make sure I type it in, but I think you get negative 99. Is that what you got? Raise your hand if you got negative 99. Does anyone need help typing that in the calculator? And then you have to hit this button, and then put the 3, and then arrow out. Yeah, and then do minus 11, negative 2, and then yeah, close it. And then for a square, we have a key for square, and then the rest you just type in. Anybody else? Doesn't that work? Okay, so negative 99. So the other way to do it though, because if we did not do part E, what if we didn't do part E and we didn't have that function to use? Well, you can still figure it out without creating the function. The second way to do that would be to use your calculator, find f of negative 2 and g of negative 2. So let's go back to these equations that we started off with and plug in our negative 2. So we have negative 2 squared minus 2x. So I want you to pick up your calculators, plug in your negative 2 for here and here. Go ahead and find your solutions. So for f of negative 2, I think you get 9. Who got 9? And then for g of negative 2, I think you get negative 11. Is that right? I feel like I'm talking to myself. Raise your hand if you got those two numbers. Who has a question about anything that I'm talking about right now? All right, so now what we would do is just multiply those two numbers together. So we would just take f of negative 2, and multiply that by g of negative 2, which would be 9 times negative 11, and see we still get negative 99. That's two different ways to get the same answer. I wanted to show you both because on the test, you may not be asked to write the function first. So I just wanted to show you another way to do it. All right, so that's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and what's our last operation? Division. So let's go ahead and copy down F, G, and H. So all you're going to do is create a new function, and in that new function, you're going to put your f of x in the numerator. So this is f of x. And your g of x in your denominator. So your function is going to be x squared minus 2x plus 1 all over 4x minus 3. And that would be your answer. And then for part H, we're going to use that equation that we wrote in part G and substitute in our answer. So it's x squared minus 2x plus 1 all over 4x minus 3. So go ahead with your calculator, type that in. And I would just do the top and then go back and do the bottom. So type in the numerator, see what you get. Type in your denominator and see what you get. So I think you get, let me see, 1 plus 2, 3, 4. So 4 over -7. Who had that for their answer? So this is the end of 2.1. Now you should have everything you need to finish homework 6, which is due tomorrow. Go ahead, draw a line in your notebook. We're getting ready to start 2.2. So if you're titling your notes, the title of your notes for 2.2 is the graph of a function. So it's called the graph of a function, and this homework is due Friday. This homework is only 5 questions, though. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 questions. And for numbers 19, 22, and 23, all you have to tell me is the domain and range. All right, so go ahead, pick up. If you need to, take about 60 seconds to copy this down and then glue down this first cutout that you picked up. So I'll give you a minute to do that. You should have 3 cutouts. So go ahead and if you need to, write down the definition for a vertical line test. Yeah, you're just going down one at a time. I think I might have to expire them toys. Those toys, that one is annoying. I may have to find another one. Yeah. No, you can go ahead. Okay. Okay, so simply put, if you can draw a vertical line and it crossed the graph more than once, it fails the test. So when we look at A, can we put our phones away, please? Thank you. I appreciate it. So when we draw a vertical line, how many times does it cross the graph for A? So that would pass. So that would be a yes. What about B? Yes. All right. So I want you to, on your own, go ahead and answer the last 6. Just put yes or no. Does it pass or does it fail? And then I'll put up the answers and you can compare your answers with what I came up with. There's only 3 no's. No, don't glue them down yet, because just go one at a time. So I would not recommend you glue them down all at once. All right, check your answers against mine. Do you agree with my answers? So the only no's would be D, F, and G. So that's example 1. Example 2. State the domain and range. Go ahead and glue down the second cutout. No. Did I say homework 6 was due tomorrow? Did I tell y'all that? Homework 6 is due tomorrow. Homework 7 is due Friday. And I think we have a skill check Thursday. Over 2.1, which is what we just finished. Can you take it when you come back?
Am I still allowed to check it out?
No, that passed. Sorry. Okay, so domain, when you're reading domain, you're going to read the graph from left to right. So left to right. Hold on, let me make this thinner. So domain is left to right. And range is from bottom up. That's how you're going to test for domain and range. All right, so let's talk about range. Let's start with domain. So when I hold my pencil, pretend this is, well, my ruler. From here, I'm going from left to right. When does my pencil hit the graph? Right here. What does x equal right here? Not y, but x.
0.
X, 0. All right, x is 0, and it goes to the right. So that means it's starting at 0 and going towards positive infinity. So for this graph, your domain would be 0 to positive infinity. On the 0, am I going to put a bracket or a parentheses? A bracket because it's a closed circle. If it were an open circle, it would be a parentheses. Now let's talk about range. Notice I'm going to move my pencil, and this is how you should do it when you take the test. When you're trying to test for range, your pencil should be horizontal. But if you're doing domain, it should be vertical. So now let's do horizontal. I'm going from the bottom up. When does it touch my ruler? At y equals what? -1. And do you notice you have an arrow pointing up? Okay, the arrow is going up. So my range is -1 to infinity. And -1 is included, so it will get a bracket. All right, let's look at our second graph. I'm just going to put D and R. So domain, again, left to right for domain. So my ruler, when does it touch my ruler? At x equals what? What does x equal right here? -4. And then it stops right here when x is 5. So my domain is -4 to 5. -4 gets a bracket, and 5 gets a parentheses. Good job. Now for my range, I'm going to move my ruler horizontal. Coming up. When does it touch my ruler? When y is what? -4. And it stops here when y is 3. So my range would be -4 to 3. But now the -4 is going to get a what? Parentheses, and the 3 will get a bracket. All right, last graph. Notice that when I come from the left, the first thing I hit is an arrow. If you hit an arrow first, that means you're coming from negative infinity. So my domain begins at negative infinity because I have an arrow. And it stops here when x is 3. So my domain is negative infinity to 3. Negative infinity always gets a parentheses. 3 would get a bracket. Now let's hold it horizontal. When does it touch my ruler? At y equals what? -1. And do you see how it's going up? So it would be -1 to positive infinity. If your arrow points up, then it would be positive infinity. All right, any questions about that? So we're going to, that last cutout, we're going to glue down right before we leave because we're actually going to use that one tomorrow. But now let's go ahead and start example 3. This has 6 parts. So I only want you to copy down. We're going to do this one at a time. So copy down example 3. This is our function. And that's part A. So I'll give you about 60 seconds to copy it down. So in order to test if a point is on the graph, we're going to do a substitution. So this is x and this is y. Let's go ahead and substitute it in. So I'm going to put that 14 right here, and the x is going to go here and here. So 14 equals 3 plus 2 over 3 minus 6. Does everyone see what I did there? I just took the ordered pair and I substituted in to the function. I put the y where the y belongs. I put the x in both places. Now we need to see, is this true or false? So, is it true that 14 equals 3 plus 2 over 3 minus 6? 3 plus 2 is 5. 3 minus 6 is -3. Is that true? Does 14 equal 5 over -3? No, this is false. So because this is false, the answer is no. That point is not on the graph. Now, if we were to get something like 14 equals 14, or -5 over 3 equals -5 over 3, then it would be a yes. It has to be a true statement for it to be yes. And that is part A. All right, let's look at part B. Go ahead and copy down part B. The other ones go pretty fast. So part B says, if x equals 4, what is f of x? How are we going to do that question? What are we going to do? How do we figure out what f of x is when x is 4? Substitute it in, yeah. So x equals 4, I'm just going to put this 4 right here and here. So in other words, we're trying to find f of 4. So f of 4 equals 4 plus 2 over 4 minus 6. Go ahead and figure out what you get. What is 4 plus 2 divided by 4 minus 6? And you should get 6 over negative 2, which is negative 3. And that would be your answer to part B. All right, now let's do our last part. Well, not last part, but we got 4 more parts, but it'll go fast. Now let's do part C. Go ahead and copy this down. So do you see the difference between these two? This is saying if y is 2, what is x? So that 2 is going to go here. 2 equals x plus 2 over x minus 6. Go ahead and make this a fraction and solve this for x. So you have 2 times x minus 6 equals 1 times x plus 2. Go ahead and distribute, solve that for x. You should get x equals 14. All right, now let's look part D. Part D is asking for your domain. Do we have a red light in this function? So in this function, do we have a red light? Yeah, what's our red light? It's a fraction. We got an x in our denominator. So because we have an x in our denominator cannot equal 0. So x minus 6 cannot equal 0, which means x cannot equal 6. So this is my first interval. This is my second interval. So my domain would be negative infinity to 6, union 6 to infinity. All right, part E, we have to find our x-intercepts, which means y equals 0. So let's go ahead and solve that. 0 equals x plus 2 over x minus 6. Go ahead and put this over a 1. Solve that for x. So when we cross multiply, what's going to happen when we multiply this direction?
0.
Yep, 0 times anything is 0. So you get 0 equals x plus 2, which means x equals negative 2. So your x-intercept is at negative 2, 0. And then last question is we're gonna find our y-intercept, which means that you set x equal to 0. So y is gonna equal, put your 0 here and here, and you get negative 2 over 6, which reduces to negative 1/3. So your y-intercept is at 0, negative 1/3. Okay, we're not going to do that second cutout today, but I want you to glue it down today. Because, and I'm going to say that for this next one, when we do, so you can kind of see, for this next one, it doesn't take a lot of space, but you need like a little bit more than half a page. But go ahead and copy this down. You can kind of get it started. I'll give you a minute. We're not going to start it today, but go ahead and start gluing it down and copy down A, B, C, and D. When I call your name, you can see your test. If you want to do a retake, you got a week and 2 days. No.